Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com, and today we have a hand from a World Series of Poker event. We are playing 600-1200 with a 200 ante with about a 35,000 effective stack, so about 30 big blinds. And in this hand, a player opens from under the gun, and I don't have any notes on this player, but if I knew this player was particularly active, I would definitely just 3-bet and be getting it in every time. If I thought this player was overly tight, I would definitely call. And if I didn't really know what he was doing, I would also typically call. And the reason I'm calling instead of 3-betting is because if I 3-bet and the opponent gets in, I'm in fine enough shape, but it's not like I'm loving it, right? I mean, my opponent's clearly going to have jacks and tens and whatnot, but it's not like we are demolishing his range. Whereas if we just call pre-flop, we force him to stay in with stuff like ace-jack and ace-10 suited and king-queen and queen-jack suited and pocket 8s and 9s and 7s and 6s. And a lot of those hands will fold if we 3-bet. So by calling, we keep our opponent's range wider, and we're going to be in position, so this should work out well enough for us. So I'm going to call most of the time. And also that allows me to call a little bit wider because I need to be aware the initial raiser could certainly be opening mostly strong hands, and certainly I don't want to be 3-betting stuff like pocket 8s or ace-queen if my opponent's opening only good hands, right? So by calling with this hand, it lets me call a bit wider. Anyway, the big blind calls as well, and the flop comes 10-9-8 with 2 diamonds. That's typically not what you want when you have pocket queens, but they checked me, so I think we can be pretty happy betting. As stacks get shorter, you should typically be happy enough getting it in when you have an overpair and a gut shot straight draw. And also it's a reasonably good overpair, right? It's not like pocket 6s on 5-4-2. It's pocket queens. So this is a hand where I'm just going to bet and be willing to get in with it once the players check to me. It is a little bit of a rough spot. If I bet, let's say 4,000, and then the initial raiser decides to shove for 32,000, because like really, what should his shoving range look like, right? It should be mostly good draws, but notice the queens in my hand block some of the draws. Also, I have the queen of diamonds, so that blocks some flush draws. So really, it's going to really tilt my opponent's range towards made hands, and I actually don't do great against made hands. So I don't know exactly what to do if I do bet and get jammed by him, but I imagine I'm going to call it off because I'm a calling station. I do bet 4,000 this time, and the initial raiser elects to check call. Now, if the initial raiser is a very strong player, I definitely think he could have aces and kings at this point. So I am going to proceed with caution. The turn, we do get it heads up. So the turn is a 9 of hearts, which is pretty much a blank. If I was ahead on the flop, I'm definitely ahead on the turn. It's pretty unlikely my opponent has ace-9, maybe has 10-9 suited or something like that, but you'd think you would just bet that for value and protection. So I feel like we're in marginal shape. My opponent probably has either a decent draw with overcards, like ace, king of diamonds, or a hand like aces or kings or jacks. And against that range, I'm not actually crushing it. So I think we just want to check it back and see the showdown, or at least see the river. River is a 3 of clubs, and now my opponent bets 10,500 into the 18,800 pot. And I think this is going to be a pretty easy call. You may be able to justify a fold because we have the queen of diamonds in my hand. If I did not have the queen of diamonds in my hand, I definitely think this is a call with pocket queens. But with the queen of diamonds, we can essentially say that we think the opponent has way more hands that do not contain flush draws, right? So if he doesn't have a flush draw, it means he's more likely to have a made hand. And if he's more likely to have a made hand, well, that tilts him towards aces, kings, and jacks. So I think this is a close spot, but given the pot odds, we need to be right not very often at all. To figure out how often you need to be right, you take 10,000 divided by my 10, his 10, and the roughly 20 in the pot, so we need to be right about 26% of the time total to break even, and we're probably going to be right here about a third of the time or 2/3 of the time, or between a third of the time and half the time, I imagine. A lot of people say something like, oh, I need to be right half the time because, he either has it or he doesn't. But that's not really how poker works. You're getting odds, and when you're getting odds, you don't actually have to be right that often at all. And that is why, in general, I'm a bit of a calling station, because you don't have to be that right that often. And if your opponent's capable of bluffing, you're going to find that you're right sometimes, at least. So I do call. There's no merit in raising here. I think raising would be ridiculous. We would definitely be overvaluing our hand. And if I raise in this spot, I imagine I'm only going to get called when I'm beat. So there's definitely no purpose in raising. The opponent does happen to have ace-10 offsuit. I'm a little bit surprised he didn't just bet that on the flop, but if he is going to check it, he should definitely call the flop, then check the turn. But I think his value bet on the river is a little bit thin. I could very easily have a lot of bluffs, and if I have a bluff, he really wants to let me bluff. And he doesn't want to bet and get jammed on. He doesn't want to face a huge bluff. So I think the opponent should definitely just check again on the river. Because really, I'm not betting the flop with a whole lot of worse hands. And if I had those worse hands on the river, I'd probably find a fold. And like I said, I think the queens are close. So if queens are close, then certainly he's not value betting. Maybe he's bluffing, but again, I'm never folding jacks or better, right? So this is a pretty good example of a spot where the opponent's betting a marginal made hand in a spot where he is probably only going to get called when he's in bad shape. So likely a mistake on his end, unless he thinks I'm an extreme calling station where I'm calling with pocket fives or something like that, which is not going to be the case. So that's going to be it for this hand for Poker News. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, definitely let me know on Twitter at Jonathan Little. I also have a weekly blog that I write at jonathanlittlepoker.com where I post lots of fun educational articles, so check that out. And I will talk to you next week. Thanks for watching.